Today, we will be discussing the secret to productivity. Okay, let's get started here. I wanted to talk today about the secret. No, not that secret, but the secret to productivity. I've spent a long time trying lots of things to try to figure out how to be productive. And there's no shortage of systems and guides and methodologies to teach you how to be productive. Um, and if you're like me, you've also probably seen the work of another artist and been blown away by it. And maybe you're not only blown away by their work, but their ability to deliver. They're just really prolific. They're always putting stuff out there and lots of different stuff. So you've looked at all these different approaches and systems and other artists, and you're trying to answer the question, which approach is best? So here's the secret, and be ready to be a little disappointed, but please stick around after the disappointment because I'm going to go a little bit deeper and it'll be worth it. I'll kind of explain the path to making this secret work. The secret to productivity is figuring out a system that works for you. And on the system, this may seem really, really obvious. Of course, you want to find a system that works for you. But when you really start thinking about it, there are so many barriers that stand in the way from us just being honest with ourselves and just figuring out what works for us and being able to follow that system. So let me go deeper to kind of clarify that point. So the very first, most important step of personal productivity is learning to know yourself. And as I've mentioned before, I spent lots of time reading what other artists do to be successful. And honestly, it's not a bad place to start to copy what someone else has done. And I've read a lot of books about productivity too. I love David Allen's Getting Things Done. I love The Now Habit. I love War of Art. And every artist has their way that they've been productive. Each book has their system for productivity. I've tried all these different approaches, and I've learned that I have a specific way of working that I can't copy and paste from someone else's system. So that at the end of the day, I don't use any of these systems 100%. I have my own system and own approach to use. So let me kind of give you a personal example. I've spent a lot of time being jealous of other artists for doing things that I can't do. One thing that I constantly focus on is artists that have a very singular passion. They just know from early on exactly what they want to do. They go for it 100%. They can focus on it like a laser beam. But I could easily say, be jealous of other things like someone that can stay up till 2 a.m. or work long hours. But this kind of focus on a singular passion has been something that for a long time I felt like, wow, I need to have that singular passion. How can I make myself have that singular passion? And, after enough years, I've kind of learned that that's not the way that I personally work. I personally have kind of a very diverse set of interests. I get curious about lots of things. And that actually helps me immensely as I'm trying to create art. So rather than being this person with a singular passion and a singular focus, for me it's important to nurture the curiosity but then direct it into productive ways. So that's just one example of how I've tried to learn my own way of being productive and not trying to get caught up in trying to do someone else's system for being productive. But I want to break it down a little bit more, give some simple steps for approaching this. And I really want you to treat this as if you are a scientist learning an alien system. All of us think that we know ourselves. We know that ourselves because we know what we want to eat. We know that we want to, watch speed runs of Super Metroid, and we want to eat Nutter Butters, whatever. But I want you to go into this assuming you don't know yourself as well as you think you do. You're trying to understand an unknown system. And once you understand this unknown system, you can figure out how to game it, you can figure out how to master it, and you can figure out how to use it to your own benefit. So think of yourself, think of your energy levels, your mood, your interests as the system that you need to study, understand, figure out, and master. So let me get more specific and step by step on how you might want to approach this. So the very first step is to test yourself. Just like if we're in a lab, putting drops of acid into beakers of whatever, you're going to test yourself. Try different things out. I've mentioned a couple of productivity books. I'll put information about them in the description. Read the different productivity books, read the interview with artists, and try out all these different systems. Copy what other people do. Do all of it. Once you start doing that, immediately when you start doing this, don't wait. Your first day that you start doing this, and every day, take notes. This is the most important part. Pay particular attention to things like what time of day you work best and when it gets harder to work. After a certain amount of hours or at a particular time of day, is that when you get tired? How do you feel the next day after working a certain amount of hours or getting up early or staying up late to work? So collect this data day by day, and just keep in mind that some of this data will take time to collect. Maybe you can work an all-nighter for one night, or maybe you can work long days for several days in a row, or several weeks or months or whatever. Pay attention to how long you can do that before it affects you. And this is kind of a topic for another day, but personally, by ignoring these signs in myself, I've pushed myself to the point of some really serious destructive burnout. So pay attention to this stuff. One of the tools that's really helped me in this regard is using the Emergent Task Planner. I'll add something in the comments again about that. This was introduced to me by Jerzy Drozd, and it's a really cool system because it's basically a to-do list, but it also allows you to take notes on your day's works. It allows you to keep a record of how much time you spent on everything throughout the course of the day. Then you can leave little notes at the end of it that says, oh, here's what I learned about myself today. I also like to do a weekly review where I look over my notes from the week and I try to see what kind of big general insights I can gain and go forward from there. So step number 3 is really important as well. And this is why the notes are so critical. Step number 3 is to make adjustments based on your notes. Look at your notes, see what things worked, what things didn't, make adjustments, decide what things you want to try. And this point is really, really important. When you make your next series of plans, make plans based on what you know about yourself. Don't make plans based on what you think you have to do or what someone else is doing. Make plans on what you know you can do. You are guaranteed a much, much higher success rate on taking on a project if you make plans based on what you know you can do. And actually, this is a really awesome trick to start being productive, and I even recommend that you make things as easy as possible when you start. So if you're like really starting from scratch and you want to make a comic and you're thinking in your head, oh, maybe I can put in 2 hours a night on this comic and finish by this day. Instead, do this. Choose an amount of time that you're going to work that is so easy to accomplish that it's ridiculous. Commit to do 10 minutes a night. So I want to repeat this idea. Make plans based on what you know you can do. Start with what you can do, with what you have 100% confidence you can do, and work from there. And of course, you can add more and try more things once you do that, but start with what you know you can do. So those are the kind of the first general steps. But I want to talk about some things that might get in the way and some things you might want to pay attention to as you're going through the process. So one of the big ones for me is ego, and maybe this is just my particular gadfly, but I kind of have the impression that this applies more generally, that there's more people out there that deal with this. So ego can really, really screw this process up. The biggest sign that ego is derailing your productivity is the appearance of shoulds. So if you find yourself in your head saying lots of shoulds, then that's kind of a sign that ego is interfering with you just being scientific about yourself. So for example, if you're thinking, well, for my notes, I can see that I do my best work at 2 a.m. in the morning, but I really should be getting to bed at midnight. Or for my notes, I can see that I'm really not productive after more than 5 hours of work, but I should be working more than 8 hours a day. So Should is just a really great indicator that you are kind of giving weight to kind of these expectations you have in yourself or expectations you have in society about the way that you're supposed to work, rather than paying attention to the way that you actually work and the way you actually get things done. The reality is maybe you are in a situation where you have a commitment and you really do have to work a certain amount of hours or a certain time. But in those cases, you can still be smart about how you use that time. For example, do your most important tasks during your peak times and save slower, less ideal times for less stressful tasks, or just different tasks that use different faculties or a better match to your energy level at different times of day. Personally, I like to do mental tasks early in the morning when my mind is sharp, and I like to do physical tasks in the afternoon when I'm starting to get mentally groggy, and that physicality can kind of help to wake me up and get me focused. Now, be smart about how you respond to your notes. This particularly applies to your weak spots. There are really generally kind of two strategies, two ways of approaching weak spots. You can try and make those weak spots stronger, or you can outsmart them. And the strategy really depends on what the weakness is, how it plays into your day-to-day routine, and the effort it's going to take to take out that weak spot. So for example, I've learned that I'm much less productive when I work at home by myself. So I could try to learn to be productive at home, but in this case, I have to decide if I want to put the effort of strengthening that weakness or outsmarting it. And my choice in this case is to outsmart that weakness by working outside of my house. So I chose to work at a co-working office, and I find that it's much healthier for my productivity. It's not too solitary, but there's something about having people around me that makes me feel more comfortable, even when I have no direct commitment to any of them. So one of the reasons this works is that it's really easy for me just to decide once a day to walk out my front door. I just have to make that one decision, and the rest of the day is going to work, 80% better. Rather than having to decide over and over again all through the day to try and stay focused on my work, rather than being distracted by all the stuff that could be happening at home, like watching TV or playing video games or cleaning up or exercising, whatever. So look for these easy ways you can outsmart your weaknesses so you don't have to spend too much energy on trying to fight them. The same goes for things like productivity timers. I use very different social media blockers that prevent me from getting stuck in the social media loop. So I don't want to fight that psychological fight, so I let a little piece of technology solve it for me, and it works great for me. Now, on the other hand, I struggle to be consistent filling out my emergent task planner, which I just explained to you is a really, really important part of my productivity. So this is a weakness. And I choose in this case to try to make that weakness stronger, since it has a direct effect on my productivity for the day. And it's, for the most part, it's a battle that I can win. There's not a really sneaky way for me to avoid this. It's really kind of in the direct path to my productivity, so I kind of need to face that dead on. And that's really the difference. You have these weaknesses that are really aren't in your direct path. You can kind of outsmart them and find a different path and go around them. But this is one of these that I kind of really need to face my inconsistency of using the planner dead on, get better at doing it. There's not really a sneaky way to avoid it. So I have to face it directly and strengthen that area. And it's worth working on since it doesn't cost me that much time or effort to work on, and the payoff is really, really big. So think about that with your weaknesses. Think about what weaknesses you can outsmart, what weaknesses you kind of need to face directly, and think about how much time and effort they are going to cost you to try to face those things. You want to spend as much time and much energy as possible thinking about making your work the best it can be. You don't want to spend too much time trying to fight your weaknesses. Okay, so there are some of my thoughts on productivity. Try things out, take some notes, and figure out what works for you. If you've already figured out a great system that works for you, I'd love to hear about it. Please share in the comments. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.